Initiating Movieboys podcast. Still loading. Tempest and Ryan are on their way. Welcome. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, we are back with another episode of Movieboys. I am Ryan, and I'm here with my co-host Tempest.
How's it going?
And today we're going to talk about a movie from 2003 that Tempest recommended called Underworld.
Do we want to mention that, like, for the next 2 months, at least, like, through October, we're going to be doing, like, Halloween / like, spooky movies or, like, get in the Halloween spirit?
Tempest and I kind of talked about this. I think it would be fun to do a bigger lead up to Halloween and start kind of doing maybe even if it's not a horror movie, maybe like spookier themed movies leading up to Halloween. And then after that, more like holiday themed movies. I thought we both kind of thought that would be fun to do. So this was our first suggestion from Tempest, and the following week, I think we'll do something that I suggest. But yeah, do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about this movie?
Yes, and this is, I noticed we haven't been doing this, but we probably should start doing this. This is going to be like a spoiler review, so if anyone who hasn't seen this and you want to watch it for some reason, we're going to spoil it. So, Underworld, which was made in 2003, follows Celine, a vampire warrior, entrenched in the conflict between vampires and werewolves while falling in love with Michael, a human who is sought out by the werewolves for unknown reasons. So, this movie... I think I remember you saying that, like, you hadn't seen this before, so this is, like, your first time seeing it?
Yes, yeah, this was definitely my my first time seeing this movie.
What was your, like, overall opinion?
So I thought that it had its fun moments. I think I definitely enjoyed the second half and kind of the third act the most out of anything. When I looked it up and found out it was made in like the early 2000s, I was like, okay, that definitely checks out. And the fact that it was made after The Matrix too, I feel like isn't a huge surprise, because it definitely feels like, like aesthetically and a lot of the editing, a lot of slow motion and action scenes, people holding two guns, like trench coats, leather, definitely has that aesthetic to it. So that was it is kind of fun to see a lot of these sort of early 2000s movies that kind of pulled from it and also did its own thing and tried to like create something new out of that aesthetic. And I think this spawned like a lot of sequels, right?
I think there's 4 sequels and then a prequel.
But I did find some of this to be pretty fun. I think one of my favorite things in the movie in general, and I feel like we can get into this a little bit more once we start getting into the plot and stuff, but I really liked Bill Nighy. I think that's how you pronounce his name. The Victor.
Bill Nighy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his like vampire godfather performance in this. I thought that was a lot of fun. I liked his first form the most, though. I kind of was like hoping that he would. I know it wouldn't have made sense for him to stay in it, but I loved when he first came out of his tomb. He has all of these like tubes connected to him that are like feeding him blood because he's kind of weak. Yeah, I thought that was really, really cool. Just the way that he talked too, I thought was in those earlier scenes was great. And just I don't know, there were also a lot of, I feel like, really cool like camera techniques and stuff and like cinematography things that I liked a lot. Like when the main character played by Kate Beckinsale is sort of reviving Victor, this like vampire sort of, what would you call him? Like a
vampire elder.
Yeah, vampire elder. When she's reviving him and you're watching the camera, it's kind of like a digital camera move, but it still looked really cool to me. And it's like the camera sort of follows the drop of blood into his mouth, and you see it like go all the way to his heart. And I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff like that I enjoyed. I still don't know like how much you love this or how much you like this, how you'll feel about this, but I guess my biggest sort of issue with it was I just don't love Kate Beckinsale. And I think a lot of the reviews that I was reading about this kind of made me laugh on Rotten Tomatoes, because there were straight up like at least 3 reviews that were like, Kate Beckinsale is such a hot vampire, and that was like the tagline review on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, oh god, like these are such like 2004 sort of reviews. But like I don't think she's necessarily bad, but I think that I don't know if the later movies change this at all, but I feel like she's so stoic. For character reasons, I understand why she is, but I feel like I would have enjoyed some smarmy quippiness, not like Marvel level quippiness, but a little bit more
more personality, you mean?
Just more personality, I guess. And I would have liked to see, and I feel like it's just kind of Kate Beckinsale's thing. I even think in Lord of the Rings, I love Lord of the Rings, but I kind of just feel the same way about her in that. I just think that she's
Kate Beckinsale's in Lord of the Rings? I don't think she's in Lord of the Rings. Are you talking about Liv Tyler?
Wait a second, is she not in Lord of the Rings?
I don't think she's in Lord of the Rings, dude.
Okay, we will leave this in. She looks so much like Liv Tyler. Holy shit. Okay.
Wow.
There were a lot of early 2000s actors. Okay, I'm going to defend myself. There were a lot of early 2000s actresses that just were like Liv Tyler and just kind of had that energy. I also, for a minute, I was like, Kate Beckinsale was also in Resident Evil, right? Like that was her too?
No, that's Milla Jovovich.
I might be racist against white women. I think maybe that's the issue.
Okay, no, wait, did you seriously think that she was in Resident Evil?
I didn't think she was, okay, I didn't straight up.
Or were you joking?
I'm mostly joking.
Okay, thank God.
I was like, I think I just got them confused because I've never really watched the Underworld movies. I've really only seen like the posters. And more or less the same thing for the Resident Evil movies. Like I've kind of just seen the posters and the lead character just looking kind of dour holding a gun on both. So I feel like I kind of saw them around the same time. I think the first Resident Evil movie was also, did it come out around a similar time as this? I think it did.
I think so.
I think, yeah, a little bit before this actually. So I think that's why like my brain kind of was confusing them. But yeah, I haven't seen both. So I didn't actually think that it was this. Yeah, I didn't actually think it was the same actress.
All white women with dark hair look the same to you? Is that what the point you're just trying to get across?
Especially white women that are like, their role is to kind of be stoic and look hot and kind of what do you think about this movie? Why did you pick it, and what's your kind of like history with this movie, I guess?
We're going back in time to little Tempest, who is like 12 years old, and I saw trailers for this movie and I thought this looked like the coolest fucking thing in the world. Like I was soying so hard, and I begged my dad to like take me to go see this. And he said no because like for the longest time it was just my mom, and then my mom remarried. And my mom didn't really give a shit about what movies my sister and I watched growing up, but as soon as she married my dad, he was like, "You're too young. No rated R movies." So I didn't get to watch it, and I was so fucking sad. Like I remember being like, "Why don't you just like go see it beforehand, and if there's anything that you think is like too hard for me, like you can just like block my eyes in the theater." And I was so fucking desperate to see this film, and I didn't get to see it. Fast forward 2 years later, in like 2005, I'm at my friend's house, and he's like, "You want to watch Underworld?" And when I tell you, it was like a religious experience. Like I felt like I was betraying. I was like, I'm betraying my father by watching a rated R movie, and then also I'm like seeing this movie that's lived in my imagination for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Like it was a moment. Having said all that, I definitely remember liking it a lot more when I was a teenager versus now. And I was thinking about this. You know, when people talk about how, oh, it's just like, it's a movie for kids. Like when we're talking about like kids movies, so you don't have to try that hard because it's just for little kids.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I feel like it's almost got that energy of like made for teenagers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It feels like, honestly, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of CW stuff, but the stuff that I have watched, it seems like this is like a little bit of an edgier version of that. It has all these like hot people that are just looking very like serious and just seem like, except for Bill Nye, kind of just seem more like models than actors. And they're not like, I actually don't really think any of the, even the main actress in this, I feel like Kate Beckinsale, I feel like isn't bad, but they're just all kind of a little bit playing. It's all being played a little bit too seriously, and it's all very stoic. And I agree. It definitely feels like a movie that's made for younger people, without a doubt.
They turned the edgelord to 11 on this. Like it really does just feel like teenage edgelord edgelord kind of thing where you're like, oh, this is so cool, this is so badass. But then it's like you watch it as an adult and you're like, all right, this is a little bit cringy at times.
I honestly still love the first Matrix movie, and I think it holds up. But
Oh yeah,
even that movie has it has some moments that are like, all right, this maybe doesn't hold up the best. And I think that just slow-mo action scenes, like, overdoing them, especially with characters just like firing guns at each other, I think that a lot of people, I don't know, I feel like even in the Matrix, I personally don't love those types of action scenes, because I feel like just in general, I have like kind of a weird take regarding like gunplay in movies.
okay.
I feel like usually it's never going to be anywhere near as engaging as like a well choreographed like fist fight for me.
Oh yeah.
And I think that I started to like this movie more in the third act, when there was a little bit more of
Hand-to-hand
like
combat.
interesting, yeah, hand-to-hand combat. And I was kind of hoping that, and again, this is a spoiler review, I guess, she kind of just like cuts his head in half, which was kind of cool. But I was kind of like hoping for a little bit more of like a fight between them, I guess. Like, and I think that I don't know, I feel like doing these types, you can do a firefight well, but it's just so difficult, and it's just not as intimate. You know what I mean? Like, it's just watching two shots of people across, like in a hallway across from each other, and there's like a reverse shot of people just shooting guns. I don't know. It kind of it doesn't take me out of it, but it's just, I feel a little bit more like disengaged, I guess. It just feels, because you can't really tell exactly where the bullets are going. You don't know if the people are really in danger or not. But if someone gets punched in the face, like you know, like that's like an impactful moment. Or if someone blocks a punch, like you see and you know exactly what's going on. But with firefights, it's a lot harder to convey that. And I think some movies pull it off better than others, but it's a difficult thing to do, I feel like.
It almost feels unrealistic because it's like you're spraying someone down with bullets, and like, I mean, I know they're supposed to be like werewolves and vampires, but it just seems very unrealistic that they're just getting up and they're fine. Did you notice how much stuff in this was done with practical effects?
Yeah, and that's something that I kind of wanted to talk about, that I did also like. I think some of the like the werewolf, lichen, whatever transformations actually still looked pretty cool.
Yeah,
I don't know how you felt, but
I think, okay, we might have to like spend a minute on talking about the werewolf design, but I know that the director, I think it's Len Weissman, he said that he wanted to do like a guy in a suit, like he didn't want to do like full CGI monsters because he just thought you could do more with like someone in a suit. And to be fair, like I definitely think that like the technology of like how they made the suits work and everything, like the people are on stilts, like the way that they're in there, it's really cool. They had like the entire face is like mechanically like done with like controls, so like raising the eyebrows and the mouth and everything. So like technically I think that's all like fucking cool that they did all that. That being said, I do not like the way that the lichens and werewolves fucking look in these films. I'm not a furry. I just really like werewolves, but I think the werewolves look like gross. They look like mutated hamsters. Like I fucking do not like the way they look at all. It's my least favorite thing with the movies. I even think I remember feeling that way as a kid, like not thinking they looked that cool. So I don't really like the way that they look, but I think the practical effect of the guy in the suit was pretty good. And then also the transformation scene, like the one they did at the beginning of the film where they're in that train, like the subway area, and it's like mostly dark, and then there's like flashes of light, like strobing. That was done really well. I think it still holds up for what it is.
I agree, like especially in moments, and I think that I feel like I've said this on a previous episode or something, but it's just I think on when we were talking about Prey, but it's always easier to do any kind of special effect when it's a little bit darker, or you can play around with lighting. And the scenes where it just didn't look as good was in that finale where you just have them in basically direct light, and that's where I don't know, I guess I'm curious. What do you have any examples of like werewolf designs that you're like, this is kind of the peak for me that I really do like? Because I guess I didn't think about that. I don't know if I loved the design particularly, but yeah, I just thought the effect for what they were going for was executed well, exactly like you said. But yeah, are there examples of any that you really like?
I think for me, I when I'm looking at thinking of like werewolf designs, I think there's more more art that I have. Like I just showed you this recently, like all my fucking art that I have. When it comes to movies that I like, there's very few. Maybe American Werewolf in London,
Yes,
and then
that's a good one.
I don't hate the werewolf design in the Van Helsing movies, but it's not the best. Oh, and then also in later episode or later movies of the Underworld series, some of the werewolf designs I think are better. Like they look less hamstery and they look more wolf. They look more like wolves.
Okay, that's cool. I guess something that and I guess something like I'm curious to ask you. Have you seen all of these movies?
Yes. I don't think I've seen the more one of the like the last sequel. I think it's called like Underworld Blood Wars. I didn't watch that, but I've seen the first Underworld movie, the second one, which is Underworld Evolution, the third one, which is technically a prequel. It's Underworld Rise of the Lycans, and then there's a fourth one, and then I think that's the Blood Wars after that. I think only the first three are good, in my opinion. Like good for like what they are, not like good as in like this is Citizen Kane.
Yeah, right.
But the last two, I know that like a lot of people have mixed feelings about them in the Underworld fandom because they're really heavily relying on less CGI, and the werewolves just look like shit. They look really bad in the new ones, and then also I think they have like a different director and different people like working on it, so it's not the same exactly. Oh, and then Scott Speedman, the guy who plays Michael, he only did the first two movies and he just didn't want to come back for whatever reason and do more. So that's kind of a big deal because he's like the male lead of the film and he's just like
For
peace.
sure.
He was just peace after a couple. Especially because like spoiler for the entire fucking Underworld franchise. Do you care if I spoil stuff?
No, go for it.
Like in the next film, the sequel, like they there's a sex scene, like they have sex, so it's kind of implied that there's a relationship, and then by the fourth movie, they have a kid, and then the kid is like 3/4 vampire and then 1/4 werewolf or whatever. So then the fourth one is mainly about like their vampire, their hybrid kid. I'm sorry, where were we even going with this?
Just in general, I was asking you kind of like how you felt about this movie in relation to the others. Like, do you think this is the best one?
No,
Do you think...
no, actually
No?
not. I actually think that the second one is actually better because I feel like the action is better. There's less guns actually, and then also I feel like some of the effects are better. And I feel like the story is a bit more interesting in the second one.
Because I'm totally okay with like an action movie or like a genre movie having kind of like I'm fine with it having like maybe a little bit more of a simple plot, but I kind of wish they would have.
Oh, the plot is way too convoluted.
Yeah, and I think that I feel like if it were me, I don't know. I think you should just give the audience the character motivation just early on. Like,
Yeah.
It took like an hour, I think I saw with Celine, getting like sort of her character motivation and why she hates the Lycans so much, like over an hour in is kind of just like, okay, I don't see why you needed to withhold this information. There's really no like narrative reason. At least I feel like why they needed to do that. Like, I think that I would have been a little bit more engaged, like in the conflict in general, earlier on if I would have known like this is why she's invested, because it did kind of just feel like I think Michael says like, oh, you're just following orders, and that's kind of like the whole movie. For the first hour I was like, okay, are they kind of just they're just kind of doing this because it's what they've always done. It's one of those sort of like endless sort of conflict stories with two like warring factions. But it was interesting to me to learn a little bit more about why she's so personally invested, and I just feel like I would have liked to get a little bit more of a sense of that early on, so I knew, I guess, a little bit more about the characters and how to feel. And that's really the only bit of character that you get from her, I feel like, because I don't know. I also just I mean, maybe the relationship gets a little bit more interesting as the series goes on, but I just felt like I didn't get a whole lot of like chemistry from them and didn't get like a sense of that
Yeah,
in this movie.
they have kind of zero chemistry in this film. I don't understand because it's like you don't need to like make everyone a romantic like interest for someone. Like they can just be two people like getting shit done in a movie. Like they don't always need like we don't always need like a them to hook up. I guess they should have developed it more because like in the later ones like they are kind of like a couple, quote unquote. I do think they also have better chemistry in the second movie. Although maybe I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe I'm just misremembering.
Because I definitely felt when they kissed, I was kind of like, oh,
yeah, it just comes out of
It
nowhere.
kind of surprised me, and then it made me think like, oh, right, this is a movie from 2003. There was definitely a long period where I think every single movie felt the need, like, well, if you have a man and a woman in a movie and they're the leads, they have to get together. I think that, and that's what I just felt like in that moment was like, all right, whatever, I'll move past it. But like, it definitely feels like something that I'm kind of glad that not every movie feels the need to do anymore. But it is interesting to hear that the second one, they kind of improve that, or at least as it goes on, they sort of improve that relationship a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a little. I think because you can't really just like. I guess you could watch the second one without seeing the first one, but because I almost feel like you just need the backstory of the first one to like enjoy the second one fully. But yeah, the second one is definitely a lot better. Even the poster for the second movie is way better than the first one, in my opinion. Oh, I know we were talking earlier about the werewolf design. Didn't like the werewolf design, but I really liked Michael's hybrid design. I thought that was really fucking cool.
Yeah, and it was a nice practical design. Like I feel like if someone rebooted this series today, it would probably just be some kind of like crazy CGI like monstrosity thing. You know what I mean? And it was nice to see that.
In later movies, they change his design so it looks worse. I don't know why they did that. I wish they just stuck with how it looks for this. Like in the second movie, they give him more of the wolf hamster face. Yeah. So like I think it looks his hybrid design looks the best like at the end of this movie, and then it just goes downhill from there. Oh, I have a question for you. What country are they in?
Oh shit!
This is a trick question because it's
is it? I genuinely am not sure. Is it? Are they just in? Are they in the UK?
No, they're the series is supposed to be set in Hungary. Yeah, they mention Alexander Corvinus, who's a Hungarian warlord, but like I feel like when you look at this film, it looks like I can't like they could have done a better job with like, flushing out where it is, especially cuz like pretty much everyone has like an American accent except for the English actors.
Yeah, that threw me off. And yeah, when they mentioned the Hungarian warlord or whatever, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I mean, if it's some kind of flashback, they could be coming from anywhere. And I just assume like, okay, this is maybe the UK or maybe somewhere in the US. I have no fucking clue. I feel like they didn't. Yeah, you're right. They didn't really like directly establish that, and they could have just with like a title card or something.
That's the thing that I think is the most interesting about this movie is it feels like certain details are really flushed out and then other things are just glossed over. Like when it comes to the story. Like there's also too much fucking narration in the beginning of this. Like she's recapping an entire war at the very beginning of the movie, and then there's just a lot of this is like exposition and just explaining stuff, and I wish there was more showing and less telling.
Yeah, and I think that also plays back to this being like an early 2000s movie thing. I feel like there were a lot of movies that sort of after Lord of the Rings were like, okay, well, we need to have this, if there's any lore whatsoever, we need to have this like long like expository dialogue at the beginning explaining everything that's going on. And the problem is I think that what that movie gets right, not that this is trying to be Lord of the Rings or anything, but I just feel like a lot of movies sort of tried to ape that. But what Lord of the Rings gets right, I think, is it actually has a lot of cool visuals and it shows you what happens, like you just said. It actually lets everything play out. It lets it play out visually, and it isn't just someone explaining it like standing on a rooftop or something. You know what I mean? Which is just not. It's just not as interesting, and to me sometimes, most of the time, reads as like, okay, there was a studio executive somewhere that saw a test screening of this and was like, where are they and why are they doing this? And then they just added a voiceover later that kind of like quickly explained
Yeah.
things in the beginning, and they can change that as many times as they want until people understand, well, like, or until that they stop complaining. So it seems like something that's pretty easy to change later on, and I guess not having any visuals to go along with it to me makes it seem more of an afterthought and less like deliberate, I guess.
Even in the second film, they went back and kind of fixed this. The beginning of the second film is a flashback scene that gives you context for the rest of the fucking movie.
And that's great. And that's what it should, like, I feel like this first movie should have just opened with it should have just opened with the main character and her family being killed. Like, it just open with that. I mean, is that maybe a little cliche? Yeah, but that's the character motivation that we need. Have some kind of like match cut with her like watching what's going on to her in modern times, like hunting down the werewolves, just to give us a sense that feeling hasn't gone away. And that's, to me, that would have been like a little bit like uplifting for the beginning section of the movie, and like, because I think everyone can kind of get behind like revenge in that case, and can understand the feelings that come along with that. But just starting off and just not giving the audience that information, it feels kind of just like a needlessly, like you said earlier, like kind of convoluted way to tell the story, when it's like it's actually not the most complicated. Like, that aspect of like revenge isn't very complicated, and I think it could it could propel the plot forward a little bit in a little bit more of an interesting way, I guess.
I don't know if you know this or not, but I think Mythbusters did either an entire episode or they did just a couple scenes from this movie where they basically like tested out if certain things could be done. Like, specifically, when she's by the elevator and she shoots at the floor to like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they did a Mythbusters episode about that. I remember watching it when I was a kid. Spoiler alert, it is impossible to do that. Like, they even tried doing it with like... what is it? Like, they even tried like doing it as long as fucking possible, like shooting at the ground with like machine guns for like 10 minutes. And
oh my god.
Yeah, they could barely get it through. It was pretty funny.
That's really fun. I had no idea I feel like I've seen like almost all of Mythbusters. I feel like I had to have watched that. Maybe I just forgot. But I kind of like that moment is corny, but I kind of like it, honestly.
There's a lot of really cool moments like that. Like this movie is almost like, I know we've talked about this a couple times, like for like themes and other reviews, but like there's just a really good moment in the movie, and it almost like works as like a TikTok or like a or like a music video, or just like a really like a short little clip. Like one of my favorite scenes is when Michael is in the back of that like police car or whatever, and he's like about to transform, and then they put on like that rock song or whatever, and he's like in the back like in anguish, like about to like shift into a werewolf. I think that's fucking cool. But like, would I recommend that someone has to watch this whole fucking movie just to watch that scene? Probably not. Oh, one last thing I wanted to get on is, I don't know how, I guess I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. So the whole lore of like why werewolves and vampires exist in this universe, and I think it is cool that they tried to do something different, and I don't think it's like bad. I just think that some of the implications that they're trying to bring through for the rest of the movie doesn't quite make sense for me. Is there's this dude, Alexander Corvinus, who had 2 kids, and apparently they say that like he had like this gene mutation which made him survive this virus, and it changed him, and then that made him an immortal, and then like his kids also have the exact same gene, and one of his kids was bitten by a wolf, and one of his kids was bitten by a bat, and that's how werewolves and like vampires came to be. Is like those are the 2 original ones. And then they talk a bit about how the vampires are basically like the aristocracy, like they're, the wealthy elite of the world. And then they basically enslaved the werewolves, and they were like used as slaves. I think that's like that's kind of fine, but I just think it doesn't really work that they both came from like the same place. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that like the werewolves would have needed to have a different origin story other than the exact same origin story as the vampires. Because basically, like, Alexander Corvinus was like also part of the aristocracy. And when his son Marcus becomes a vampire, like, he's also part of the aristocracy, and that's why later on you find out that that's why Marcus turned Victor into a vampire, is because Victor was also part of the aristocracy, and he needed like land or money or like soldiers for some bullshit or whatever. Um, and then I guess the way they're trying to get around this, and they explain this more in the other movies, is that like when William, that was like the first werewolf, when he got bit by the wolf, he just went like crazy and psycho. But like
Yeah.
the origin of the werewolf was also like from the aristocracy, and I don't think that makes sense to like then they just become like slaves in like the next generation. I feel like that just needed to be flushed out a bit more. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I definitely picked up on that too, and thought that was kind of a weird choice. I honestly thought it would have made more sense if they just made them come from like a more like impoverished background or something, to kind of play up like a class struggle sort of thing. I feel like that probably would have made more sense to do. Yeah, I agree. I didn't have that in my notes or anything, but it's definitely something I noticed, and I thought was kind of a weird choice. Again, it seems obvious, especially if I think they're kind of going for like a Shakespearean thing.
Yeah.
It would make sense to make it like a class struggle. So I don't really know why they didn't just go for that kind of obvious. That it seemed like a kind of low hanging fruit that you should just do, because it's kind of an easy audience buy-in in a way too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the movie, like the conflict with why Victor killed his daughter was because what's his name? Lucian, the Lycan guy, he got his daughter pregnant, and he was like, this is disgusting, like we can't have like a hybrid, half vampire, half werewolf baby, like that's fucking disgusting. And they're kind of like briefly touching on the fact that this is about like racism and stuff, and like
Yeah.
and racism and like class struggle. It's kind of like those two things together, but I think they weren't 100% like fleshed out the best way that makes them the most sense. I would have suggested that they make the werewolf origin story like something else, just to have it make more sense, because it just seems kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know. There's little tweaks I would just do differently. I don't know.
No, I think that completely makes sense. Do you want to kind of based on that, do you want to sort of move into your final thoughts?
I think this movie is a lot of fun for what it is. Like it's kind of just, it's in that genre of like turn off your brain to watch it kind of thing. Like I know that's kind of a cop out to say like, oh, you can enjoy it if you just don't pay attention to it too much. But I think if you like the Matrix / Blade, Edgelord style of early 2000s movies, you probably would really enjoy this. And especially if you like werewolves and vampires, like this is one of the better werewolf. I'm talking like specifically like werewolf and vampire movies. I think it's one of the better ones. It's probably not the best of like both of like the genres separated, but I think I would also say this movie's more for like teenagers. Teenagers are edgelords.
Yeah, just inherently, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I went into this, and I'm not. I mean, I know I think the first couple episodes we sort of prefaced like specific genres and kind of stories that we like or dislike. I guess I would never like seek out like vampire and werewolf stuff, but there have been lots of movies that involve werewolves and vampires that I do like. But it's just, I feel the same way about like zombies and a lot of different like creature type of movies. I don't necessarily seek them out, but a good movie is a good movie. So like I'm always, I'm willing to give it a shot. And yeah, I thought that it was definitely fun watching this just to see like all of the influences, the early 2000s stuff, like the Matrix influences, the Blade influences. And yeah, I think that, like you said, I think if you're younger, if you enjoy the Matrix and stuff like that, you might have fun with this. Even though I did like have problems with this, it does make me curious to check out the second one. At the very least, just if you say that one's even better. And yeah, my one last thing I wanted to mention is that I definitely freaked out a little bit and had to look it up when I saw that Danny McBride wrote this.
Different Danny.
I found out that it's a different Danny McBride, but I was like, "What? Are you serious? What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Like, but I was like, oh, "Okay, it's a different." And honestly, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world because he actually writes the new Halloween movies. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Huh. Maybe he did, and I frantically was like looking it up on my phone. And I was like, it's a different one. Okay, but I don't know. It is funny to think about. Like I don't know why I was immediately just thinking about like his Eastbound and Down character just ranting about vampires is just very funny. But
I wanted to ask you, if you could be a werewolf or a vampire, what would you pick?
I feel like it would be way cooler being a vampire. I don't know. I think that's
Really?
an easy choice for me.
I would
Yeah.
pick a werewolf. I think werewolves are cooler, in my opinion. I don't know.
I'm kind of making a more basic bitch choice, to be completely honest. Like I think most people would probably say vampire, but I don't know. Just the eternal life of it all. Just having to constantly get like just feast on blood is pretty metal. So I kind of like that.
What would you like if what is your like vampire canon? Like are you like seducing women in alleys and like draining their blood, or like how are you like existing as a vampire?
That's a good question. I feel like I would try my best to. I don't know if I'm being honest or not. I feel like maybe I feel like I would try my best to see if there was a way to do it ethically, but I would do what I had to. You know, like maybe I'll go to make a deal with like a mortician or something and
Really?
get bodies as it. But or it would also be fun to just. Maybe do like a Dexter type of thing. Just go after like pieces of shit people and just capture them and fucking kill them and drink their blood. You know what I mean? That would also be that would be kind of fun. I'm thinking like what would make a fun story too. Honestly,
A Dexter vampire sounds like fun.
What about you? What would be your werewolf origin story?
I like the idea of like being born into being a werewolf versus being bitten, and then having it be more of like a family conflict kind of like origin story of like living out in the woods, but then like I don't want to live in the woods, I want to live in the city and be a werewolf. And then they're like, no, you can't be a werewolf in the city, we have to live in the woods. I guess it sounds really stupid, but
they want the trad werewolf lifestyle.
Yeah,
in the woods.
yeah. So my family is like, you need to embrace like your heritage, and you're a werewolf, so we have to live in the woods and live like wolves. And I'm like, no, it's the 21st century. We don't have to do that anymore. I could live in the city. And then I'm werewolf attorney at law.
Or maybe would there be any scenario where you'd play basketball? That's my only other question. Like Teen Wolf.
I'd rather play hockey.
Oh, okay. That could be, you know what?
Hockey.
We talked about the Airbud movies. Like, I feel like I'm surprised Teen Wolf didn't get like a series of different spin-offs with like Teen Wolf plays hockey. Teen Wolf plays chess. I don't know.
I feel like werewolf playing hockey, dealing with disappointing his parents, like that. I want to watch that movie.
God, that would honestly be pretty entertaining. Like watching. Have you ever seen Goon, the hockey movie?
I have not.
It's a hockey movie that's more about an enforcer, just someone who is just like picking fights with people and like beating the shit out of people, and it's just about him. That would be really funny to see, like as a werewolf, like they pick you to be on their team just to essentially scare and beat the shit out of people. I think that'd be entertaining, like a little crossover.
That'd be hilarious. I want to see this now.
Any listeners want to help us make this movie? Send us money. No, I'm kidding, but.
I think your movie idea would do better as like Vampire Dexter. I feel like that has more like mass appeal than Werewolf Hockey Guy.
I think the Werewolf Hockey Guy would be a lot more fun though. Or Werewolf Attorney at Law. I also like.
I think like mine would have to be comedies, and yours could be like a serious like thriller.
There has to exist something like what I suggested has to exist. I feel like.
Or this is like the sign for university. You need to make it. Maybe not. Okay, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up.